Fear, a complex emotion that's evolved over millions of years. It's helped us survive. Sometimes it's rational, sometimes it's irrational, but is a quintessential emotion of the human experience. And that's what we're talking about tonight. So, whether you fear spiders, have a typical phobia, whether you're fearful of rational things, or whether you're fearful of irrational things like Bud Light, stay right there. We'll be right back. And we're live. All right, Norty. Another week, another show, another topic. How we doing? How's life? What you been up to? Catch me up on things.
Oh, good, man. Just working, living, tending to the cat, which I think we touched
Yeah,
on.
how's your street cat?
He's good. He's adapting to the apartment more and more every day. He's starting to calm down at night, and just
Is
he's
this like
he's
a kitten,
normalizing.
or is this like a full blown cat?
So we did take him to the vet for the first time. So he's a full blown cat, but we have a feeling he's pretty young. So probably like one and a half is probably where he lives. So he still acts like a kitten.
Okay, tell me the story of where this cat came from, because frankly, other than following someone back to your home or something, and then you just like let it in, and like now it lives with you. I mean, is
Not
that basically the story?
not quite. I think we touched on this briefly last time. I am not a cat person at
Yeah,
all.
me
I'm
either. Dog person.
always a dog person. I love
Hey,
dogs.
welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. We're catching up on life right now, but we're going to be talking about fear as we get into some interesting articles out on the internet. But go ahead, continue, Josh.
Yeah.
Catch us up on life. This
It's
cat
actually-
that's
yeah.
found its way into your home and your hearts.
So my girlfriend is a nanny. She was walking to work because the family she nannies for isn't too far from our apartment. And she's walking to work, and all of a sudden this cat just following her, weaving in between her legs, like would not leave her alone.
That
Just
is
wouldn't leave her
weird.
alone. So she's like, you know what? Like, she's like, I don't know what to do. She called me freaking out on her way to work. I'm like, I don't know. Like, push it away, like do something and go to work. I don't know what to do. She ends up bringing it into her work family's home. They have a cat. They have a dog. They have two small children.
They were cool with just a random cat coming into the
So
house.
they tried to make it work. Like, you know what? We're going to keep it in our bathroom until we can take it to the vet, get it checked out, make sure it's not going to be at harm to our animals. Then we're going to try and acclimate it. So fast forward, I don't know, a few weeks. What is time? They try to introduce this cat to their older cat, who is ancient and not in the best of health. They can't have this cat upset by this new cat. So it goes awry quickly.
Okay. But they took it to the vet and made sure it didn't have like a deadly disease.
Yeah, so there wasn't going to cause any harm. They tried to make it work, and it just did not work.
Yeah.
And I had said in the midst of all of this, I said, you know what? If it doesn't work out with the family, like, we'll try and find it a home. We'll keep it here, or we'll just keep it here if the landlords are cool with it. So landlords were cool with it. So that backfired on me.
So that's how you ended up with a cat.
And it also didn't work out with this cat. So both things backfired on me. We now have a cat. He is lovely. And I still would not consider myself a cat person, but he's a very cool cat, although hectic because he is still very much acts like a kitten.
How do you know this cat didn't belong to somebody else?
We tried to like post everywhere, tried looking for it. The theory is based on how he's been acting.
Mm-hmm.
We think he was an indoor cat, that somebody tried to make him an outdoor cat because he's very vocal. And they didn't want him inside at night trying to play and being loud once he was no longer a kitten. So they tried to let him out, and he freaked out and ran away, and that was the end of it.
And they just never saw the cat again, and they were just like, YOLO, life goes on.
Because that's what people do. There are pet owners that try to have a pet, and then once they realize it's a ton of work, they just abandon it.
Our dog is one of our dogs is very vocal. I wish we could just make her an outdoor dog, and no, I love our dogs. I would never want them to disappear. But if they would shut up.
Yeah, and the vocalness, you know what? It's annoying, but it is also it's very cute, and it's very endearing when he makes little weird noises for everything he does. He's a good cat. And that's the story of how.
All right. Well, stand by. Josh is going to get a brain parasite.
I'm cool with it.
With some psychotic disease, I'm sure, from this cat.
Check him out. Vet said he's healthy boy. We're good on the brain parasite.
Yeah, actually, interestingly, this kind of segues in a little bit into our main topic of the night, being that we're discussing fear and obviously we take more of a brain-based approach, right? And with all of our topics and everything, and I think fear, the general topic of fear, there's actually, from like an evolutionary or biological perspective, there's a lot to talk about. I think there was actually some really interesting research studies that, if I'm not mistaken, I think these things like kind of get down to some of the like behavioral basis of, or rather, the scientific basis of behavior, right? So scientists trying to say like, okay, obviously we can observe behavior, we can observe trends, right? We can observe how things happen behaviorally in nature from a phenotypic perspective, right? What do you see on the outside? But then from more drilling down to the science of it, like what things about science tell us why the behavior is occurring, right? So that's sort of the background information. And basically what these experiments showed were that, interestingly, mice or rats, or I don't remember, rodents of some sort, they did these experiments, right, where first they established kind of the baseline. They wanted to know, like, if I think they took like pads or something like that and soaked them in cat urine. Or so, I think that's the basis of the experiment. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here. This is not like material I've prepared. This is like material I'm pulling out of the archives of my education. And they basically put these mice or rodents of some sort in a cage. I don't remember what it was. And then had these like pads kind of soaked in cat urine to see like if the smell of a predator would like kind of like alter their behavior. And sure enough, it kind of it showed that they exhibited more of a defensive posture. They were less adventurous. They would come out from hiding less often, that type of thing. And then what they did is then they took cohorts of rodents that were infected with, I believe it was Toxoplasma gondii. So it's a common parasite that lives its life cycle in multiple different organisms. Humans are one of them. That's one of the reasons why pregnant women aren't supposed to change the cat litter or really, I think, interact with basically have any contact with cat feces, right? Because transmission of the parasite from the cat to the human, while it doesn't have any effects really for an immuno intact human, it can affect a developing fetus. And so this Toxoplasma gondii shares a life cycle, right, between different organisms, from rodents to cats to humans. And it's like a circle, right? It needs to go through all these various life stages in different host organisms in order to complete its life cycle. And the question, like the reality is like, well, how is that like evolutionarily beneficial for the organism, or really like what's going on here, right? That's kind of what they found is that actually in rodents infected with the toxoplasma would change their behavior to exhibit more risk-taking behavior. They basically lost their fear, and that's the idea, is this sort of like biological overriding of the fear mechanism by the parasite in order to make the host organism basically wander out and play with fire. And they would get more, they would come out more, they would be more, they would basically were not deterred by these like cat urine soaked pads. And so that was the basis of the experiment. I know I gave a lot of background information, but that's kind of because I feel like it really wouldn't. This example, well, it's interesting, but if you don't have a lot of the background information, it kind of loses its interest. But
well, I mean, that makes sense to me, right? This fear, this thing that causes us to be fearful of certain things, like it has to be some type of evolutionary trait to keep us alive with even our basic surroundings. And you touched on a little bit before. I think there's like that type of fear, and there's complete irrational fears where I don't know where those
Yeah.
stem from, but I got some of those too.
Yeah, in general, at least from a little bit of the research I was doing, they kind of put things more in like you have learned fears, then you have these like irrational learned fears, and then irrational unlearned fears where they're like literally like there's no real explanation.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of different buckets of like ways that like fear develops in the human brain. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But enough about that. I mean, I think one of the things we want to do is kind of jump right into more of the current events and, you know, it's interesting topics about fear, not just the biology. So where do you want to start tonight there, Norty, with our current events section?
I think so. I think this is topical for us, and I just thought it was interesting. So there's a new video game that came out. What was it? Jedi Survivor. It was the
Yeah.
sequel to Jedi
Anything interesting?
Fallen
We
Order or
should
something
pull up
like
on
that.
the screen share here.
I know I sent you the article.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up just to see if there's anything
It,
interesting to share with the audience.
I don't know if there's anything interesting about fear in there, but it has a mode that you can turn on, arachnophobia mode, basically turning the spiders in the game into something else. So I just thought it was fascinating. Somebody could be so afraid of spiders that a video game had to adapt in arachnophobia mode that you could turn on. So there's no spiders in the game.
I just find it interesting that like this is like so novel. You'd think that if it was really an issue, more games would do that. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this was a funny thing, or if it was because somebody developing the game had like a
Gosh,
crazy
could you
fear, and it was
imagine
their way of developing them. I
you're
don't
like
know.
a game developer just going about your business and your company's like, all right, team, we're getting ready for our new launch project, Spiderland. You just literally have to like quit your job, find a new studio to work for.
Yeah, and I want to know what occurred. Like if it was something that crazy where it's like enough people like couldn't handle spiders, they had to find a way around it, or if it was just like, this would be a funny concept to throw into our game as a little Easter egg or an add-on.
I feel like it has to be like more personal, right? If there was there's so many video games out there. I feel like if this was a widespread problem, this would have
be
come
talked
to
about
the
more.
foreground much sooner.
That's
I mean,
right.
look at all the spiders in World of Warcraft. You'll go into a cave
Yeah.
and it's just spiders everywhere.
Right. There's a quest where you have to go like hit up spiders or step on them or do something.
Multiple quests.
Yeah. And that's why like it just has to be like a personal little touch that somebody thought was funny. But I do think it was interesting because
I wonder, is there like a giant like raid boss that's a spider anywhere in World of Warcraft?
I think there's a Firelands spider, if I'm not mistaken.
Spider.
I think there's a couple. I think there's one in Naxxramas too.
Here we go.
A spider themed people.
Something here. Oh yeah, Firelands, giant spider boss.
Mm-hmm.
Mix.
They had a cool warlock.
Third boss in the there's an arachnid quarter in Naxxramas.
Yep. So I remember that one too.
Eternity since I've done that. I remember in Upper Blackrock Spire there was a little spider area. Like that's what I mean. Like there's spiders been in video games forever. So arachnophobia was a real problem in video games. I feel like this would have come out way earlier in some other game. So I think this is like
it's got to be a fun thing.
An inside job of some sort.
But it's still interesting enough, right? It makes you think like what.
Yeah,
because there's some wild phobias out there, right, that are very real things, and
that's true. I wonder what some of the like craziest ones are. There's like some weird stuff.
I don't know if you have a list, but I
had a list of the most common ones. I want to see if there's a list of like the rarest, like single case reports of the weirdest.
There's
strangest.
And
phobias.
And on that
Ever.
topic, do you think phobias are something that's ingrained in us, or do you think it's a learned one from maybe like a traumatic childhood experience or something?
Oh, that's. I mean, they're the both is the
Okay.
short answer to that. At least based on like the preliminary background research I did. Right, it's like some of it is learned, some of it is actually interestingly observed. That I thought was kind of cool. They have like good animal model experiments that basically show like if a rationally fearful event happens to one organism, an organism like a rat, I think they showed it in both rats and monkeys. Like another rat or monkey observing another rat or monkey undergoing a fearful experience, and that like phobia or fear can be transferred, yeah, from just pure observation, even if they're not experiencing it themselves, which I thought was kind of cool. So to answer your question, both, right? You can have some of it is learned, some of it is irrationally unlearned, some of it is rationally unlearned, and then in a similar way they can be unlearned. Like the one example they gave is like fear of the dark, right? Like it's very common for little kids to have a fear of darkness. It's not really a learned thing. I didn't see anything that indicated it's a learned fear. It's sort of this like irrationally unlearned fear, but then very quickly extinguishes once they have this like chronic exposure to darkness in which there's no punishment or resulting event that makes it fearful. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So there's a lot of different categories that fear fits in. It's not really just this one, I guess it's not just like fear is not fear is not fear. It's very different. Let's see. Strangest phobias per Google.
Do you have any phobias or fears, irrational or not? Like, if you biggest fear, what's your biggest fear?
It's hard to say. Like, I don't think I really have any like genuine fears that are unchecked, right? There's things that scare me, but they're in check, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. Like my biggest, I'm
trying to think like if I have any like true fears. Like if you exposed me to this, like it would not matter. Like I would crawl.
I'm terrified of heights.
I mean, yeah,
but I think that's pretty normal.
That's kind of the same thing. Like, it gives me. I guess I get like the willies. Like, I'm not the person that's gonna like stand on a cliff edge and look down and be like, well, my feet aren't gonna just slip and fall. I'm like,
yeah,
no, I'm not gonna do that. But
and that's where I think, because I'm fine in most scenarios, but if I have to like look over an edge, like that's like crippling fear. Like I won't even go look over the edge. I won't get close enough to the edge to possibly like fall. Like I just won't. It sends me into complete
Space
panic.
Needle in Seattle would probably freak you out.
Hard pass. Yeah, hard pass.
That's like where the floor underneath you is like
I don't
transparent.
Like
I mean, again, that's one of those things where it's like that's like gives me the willies.
Yeah.
But it's like I will do it. It's not like I'll just refuse.
And then my irrational fear is that there's sharks in swimming pools. Like 100%. You can't change my mind. And like I can get into a swimming pool, but every once in a while I think about a shark just jumping out of the water.
Swimming pool, no.
I don't like water in general. I don't like lakes. I don't like I won't go in the ocean because sharks terrify me.
I mean, that stuff definitely, I would say, definitely freaks me out a little bit, right?
Because I don't like. I can swim. I have a hard time swimming in lakes because I start to panic of what's underneath me. So like I have to wear.
Yeah, I'll be honest, not really my cup of tea. When I was a kid, not a care in the world. As an adult, I'm kind of like, I'll get in the water, but
I didn't grow
I
up
don't
around
like it.
water either, so like I was never even when I was a kid. Like pools are fine. I'm cool with pools, but lakes, like as long as I got a life jacket, I'm
Yeah.
cool. I like floating down a river, but that's about it.
Yeah, I guess floating down a river in a tube I could do, sure. Do I want to go swimming in a river? Honestly, not
Absolutely
really.
not.
Or a lake, not really.
I like
Ocean,
boats.
I'll get in, get wet, but just like
I won't.
chilling out in the ocean and swimming, not really my cup of tea anymore. As a kid, sure. I'm definitely much more of a beach dweller.
Yeah, I like sitting on the beach, but I don't. I don't want to get in the
Yeah,
water.
but you know, water sports, sure. Go out in the ocean on a boat or jet ski. That sounds like fun.
A big enough boat, maybe, but
Yeah,
still, I don't. I'm just not a big open water guy.
I see. I remember when I was in middle school, I was down in the Florida Keys with a friend of mine and their family. And the big joke was like anytime anybody was like overboard, right? Because we go out in their boat and, literally just like, I don't know. I don't even know what we were doing. Fishing, just boating around in the ocean. I don't know. I mean, it was fun. But anytime anybody would like be in the water, we'd always mess with the other person. Like my buddy and his older brother. And like while someone's swimming around, you just be like, Portuguese man of war, run! And it would like, I don't know. I just remember that legitimately terrified all of us. That like a
Yeah,
Portuguese man of war would just like roll up and just sting you and kill you.
yeah, it's terrifying. I was in Florida for something, and you're gonna like rent some jet skis or something like that. And I was like, oh, like that could be fun. I'm sure it's fine. The guy's like, I have to let you know we've seen some bull sharks out there today, but I'm sure it's fine. I'm like, just gonna say that casually. Like you're gonna say that casually. Like
Nice.
people still like might want to go out. It's a hard pass for me.
That's funny.
Bull sharks are aggressive. Sharks scare me. I'm out.
Yeah, I don't love the idea of
And then I saw a barracuda
creatures.
just swim. I saw a barracuda swimming off the dock, and that's when I was like, "Yeah, I'm never getting in there." Barracudas are terrifying
Yeah,
looking creatures.
I'm not a huge fan of water creatures. I'm not a big fisherman. I don't know.
I
I
like
like
fishing.
crabbing when I was a kid. I used to do that
That
all
sounds
the time.
fun.
I go down to the shore, me and my buddy, get our little crab trap, and we'd hang out on the bridge and just
Toss it
crab,
over.
try to catch little blue crabs off the bridge. That was a good time.
See, that's fun. I get on board with that.
Yeah. That and when I was down in the Keys, same trip with my good buddy from middle school and his family, I went shrimping for the first time. That was fun. And it's like, you go kind of like in the, water inlets where it's real shallow. And you go in at night it's like literal, I mean, like up to your ankles. It's like not deep water at all. And you're there with this big shrimp net and a flashlight, and you kind of like flash around. And the trick is like the shrimp's eyes light up, so you're just looking for like little eyes that light up in the water, and then you see one, and then you just slowly try to snatch them with the net until you get them. That was fun. I love shrimping.
It does. It sounds like a good time.
I was like literally every down minute I had, I was like out there because it was like the water inlet was like right next to the like condo we were staying in. So anytime we weren't out doing something around the Keys, I would just grab a net and like go out in the water and just be looking for a shrimp.
Shrimping.
Yep, just looking for a shrimp. But let's see. Let's check out Google's list of strangest phobias. All right, number one on the
I think
list,
there's got to be some good ones on there.
claustrophobia. That's not that.
That's
weird.
not that weird.
That actually, it's
I
pretty
don't-
crazy.
yeah.
The number of people that have claustrophobia. Actually,
I don't like confined areas. I don't think I've ever been in a small enough
I guess
area
it's not
to.
enjoyable, but like,
I've never like hyperventilated from being in a closed space, but I don't enjoy it.
oh well, sure. But I mean, these people that literally have panic attacks.
Yeah.
There's number of people that cannot get in an MRI machine is astonishingly high.
Like I've had an MRI. They're like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." I was like, "This isn't that bad."
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like these people cannot mentally override and just be like, well, I could literally have a brain tumor. I need an MRI. Pure panic attack. I mean, literally, the amount of drugs I have given people just to get them through an MRI is insane.
Well, next time I need an MRI, I'm just going to act like I'm claustrophobic and get all the drugs to go in there.
Those aren't drugs you want, my friend. Let's see. Yeah, agoraphobia.
Yeah, I know that one. What's that one mean?
Their environment is unsafe with no easy way to escape. So
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
like fear of crowded places. That
Yeah.
one,
That one hits me.
maybe.
Like I said, I don't like
Maybe.
crowds. I wouldn't say I'm fearful of them, but they do make me anxious. But I wouldn't consider myself agoraphobic.
Phobophobia.
Fear of phobias?
A fear of phobias.
I am afraid of getting too many phobias to where I'll be crippled. Does that count?
I have to move this screen. I'm going to break my neck. My neck's all cricked up from all the tree planting I've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these people, I guess, have a lot of anxiety over
Getting phobias or having too many phobias?
developing phobias. That seems quite strange to me. What's this one? Ballonophobia? Fear of needles. Oh, okay.
Needles don't bother me.
I mean, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, they don't really bother me.
I don't mind shots. I don't mind getting tattoos.
Yeah.
I do not like having my blood drawn though. That freaks me out. Blood going out of the body, not good.
That doesn't freak me out by nature. However, generally they use larger needles for that. So
it's not even the needles. Like I just get lightheaded seeing blood come out of my body.
Oh. I mean, I feel like
that's not even fear. I just don't like it.
I mean, when I pre-medicine days, yeah, I'd probably like get a little woozy. That's why I wouldn't really look at it. Yeah. Honestly, like,
well, I'm the guy that has to watch the needle go in. Like whether it's if I'm getting like a shot, having blood drawn, I have to like watch it. Otherwise, like I just want to know it's like when the like prick is coming.
Well, that's the opposite. I can actually, I feel like I want to not know when it's coming because not seeing it, like there's nothing to hype up in your brain. It just happens, and you're like, ooh, ah.
I have to watch it, and like I said, it doesn't bother like that doesn't bother me.
Whatever.
The other stuff.
Let's see what else. Glossophobia.
That sounds fun. Glossy objects.
Fear of public speaking. Okay.
I feel like that's common. These aren't.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a list of strangest phobias. We're just getting whatever.
We're just
ergophobia. Fear of losing employment.
I think that's pretty standard too.
Panphobia, omniphobia, pantophobia, panophobia. Vague or persistent dread of some unknown evil. Not registered as a type of phobia in medical references. Oh, interesting.
So what is that one?
It seems like basically it's like fear of a vague, persistent, and unknown evil. It's like you just like are fearful of some sort of evil. That to me sounds like some sort of like demonic oppression.
That one's fun. I'm here for that one.
Let's see. Electorophobia. Fear of chickens.
Oh.
Electorophobia. Interesting.
That's a weird thing to be afraid of.
What is this one? Hippopotomonstrosequipedalia fear of long words.
Well,
that doesn't sound real.
That's one way to combat it, right? Like if they got to be like, "What do you have?" It's like, "Well, I can't say it. Why?" I'm afraid of it.
Hippopotomonstrosequipedalia phobia.
Bless you.
Come on. I think Google's lying to us.
I mean, I feel like you can make a phobia for anything. What else we got?
Normophobia. Fear of not having a working mobile phone. Okay.
This day and age, like I bet a lot of people have that too.
Ablutophobia. Fear of unwarranted fear of bathing, washing, or cleaning. Ugh. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah, it's gonna be a pass for me also. What else?
We're
getting weirder.
Oh yeah, astrophobia. Fear of thunder and lightning. unwarranted fear of scattered or isolated thunderstorms. Not that interesting.
Yeah.
Ophidiophobia. Irrational fear of snakes.
I think that one's more common.
I mean, snakes are...
I'm not a fan of snakes.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of snakes. No, thank you. Ophidiophobia. Fear of youth. Fear or loathing of teenagers. I think my dad has ophidiophobia. He's a boomer.
These damn kids.
I mean, the whole boomer generation's a bunch of ophidophobias.
these dang teenagers always up to no good, smoking their drugs.
You know what I think is funny, actually? Okay, so this is getting into like, I was really interesting, I don't know, podcast or YouTube video or something, kind of breaking down like the different generations and their relative sizes and the like impact that they have on the economy, which I thought was really interesting. So obviously the baby boomer generation, largest living generation.
Is that still the case?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. For sure, dude. I mean, who would be bigger than the boomers?
I don't know who came next.
Generation X. They were a very small generation.
Okay.
Right? So what I realized though is like every generation, you like kind of basically the parents of a generation are always a generation removed. Right?
Right.
So the baby boomer, the offspring of the baby boomers is our generation. The millennials, I think technically we are considered millennials. I mean,
I think I'm a Gen
you were
X.
what, late 80s? I was
89.
90.
I'm an 80s baby. I remember the 80s fondly.
Yeah, so like Generation X, I think goes up to like probably like early 80s, I think, if I had to guess. I think millennials go up pretty late. I mean, I think it's all kind of subjective. I don't.
That's like really I forgot. I thought I was classified as maybe a different one. Maybe not.
Generation.
Since millennials, then it's like is it Zoomers or Zoomers the next one?
This says the Brookings Institution defines millennial generation from 81 to 96.
Okay, so I'm millennial.
That's it. Oh yeah,
we both fit into that.
Yeah, we're definitely millennials. But basically, millennials are the offspring of the boomers. So in between millennials and boomers, you have.
Then where's Gen X? I thought you said there's Gen X.
Is Gen X. Gen X is in between, right? Gen X is Generation X is roughly 65 to 80, which makes sense because baby boomers are like 63, I think, technically. So I guess 63, 64 is the last year of the baby boomers.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right?
Then.
So the baby boomers were the offspring of all the World War II veterans, basically. So World War II veterans, I guess, were a relatively large generation. They were probably like 90% Catholic. So they all had like 8 kids, 9 kids, 12 kids. So the baby boomer generation is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Gen X, which I forget like the actual reasoning why Gen X is small, but basically boils down to the same principle. The generation of their parents was relatively small. And then you have to look at like the economic circumstances that led that generation to being small.
Right.
So Gen X's offspring or whatever comes after the millennial generation. Generation Y?
I thought it was like millennials, Zoomers. What's the Zoomers?
They might be the ones that were like born during COVID. Generation Y. Let's see. Oh, millennials, also known as Generation Y. I don't know if that's correct.
I can't keep track of all this stuff.
I know. I'm trying. Anyway, I don't know how we got down this rabbit trail,
idea.
But the point was
fear of youth.
Yeah. So the entire boomer generation has like a fear of
teenagers. That was it. Fear of teenagers.
But interestingly, us as the offspring of the baby boomers, right? As the baby boomers all start retiring from the workforce, our generation is going to be the largest generation in the workforce. So we're actually expected to prosper quite heavily financially once all the boomers start retiring. Because we're basically the largest generation with only Gen X ahead of us in terms of workforce experience.
Interesting.
So the idea, that was really what this is all about, right? Is looking at like the economic impact. And I guess the boomer generation being such a heavy component of the workforce and staying in the workforce longer led to our generation basically getting a slow start professionally.
Struggling to get into the professional
And
work.
with the recession that came like right around the time we were graduating college, basically, like 2008 recession basically impacted all of us in the workforce. And so basically our careers were all delayed by about 10 or 15 years. And then basically we're supposed to recoup that on the back end. Once all the boomers retire, they're like projecting that our generation is just going to like reap massive promotional benefits. And because we'll be the only generation, like basically Gen X is not going to be able to fill the vacancies of the boomers. So that's when the millennials are going to come in and, you know, they'll have workforce experience. They'll, you know, get promoted and we'll finally make good money to be able to actually retire.
Actually retire and actually enjoy our later
Oh,
years. I could use some great financial gains these days. You know, that'd be nice. So,
or China is going to nuke us before we even get to retirement age. That is a very real possibility, my friend.
I mean, I think I sent you an article where people are getting chips implanted. We're getting one step closer.
I'm scared of that. Although, I mean, personally, I'm not scared from a personal perspective. I'm scared for society and what that would do. Because you know what? I would literally die before they put a chip in my brain. So I'm not really worried about it for my own self. I'm worried about the trajectory of society.
What's that phobia? That's got to be a phobia.
What?
Fear of society.
Fear of the societal trajectory.
Yeah.
Like I think it's called sanity, because any sane individual should be scared for the trajectory of society these days.
And then I guess we'll leave the phobias at bay. Well, with the list of phobias at bay, but that leads me to the next thing I found is there a way to combat phobias or fears, like from like a scientific perspective that you're aware of, like outside of just exposure? Like I picture somebody's afraid of spiders.
Yeah, I mean that's the traditional therapy, right? Exposure therapy. I'm sure
you throw me out of a plane into the ocean, like I think I'm still going to be afraid of heights and sharks.
I mean,
but you never know.
Like, okay, let's say the Titanic is going down. What is Josh Norton going to do? Are you going to jump into the ocean?
Big gulp in after I'm just like clinging to the top of the...
Or are you literally just going to hold on to the ship until it literally just sucks you down?
I'm holding on to the tip of the ship hoping safety comes. I'll find like the antenna sticking up. I'll scale that bad boy.
Okay, so Josh Norton's hanging off the door while his budding lover is freezing.
I'm kicking him
off the wooden door.
I'm kicking him off.
Josh Norton's finding his way onto that door.
It's my door.
I mean, the water's freezing cold, so I'm sure most sea creatures their metabolic rate is slowed so significantly. They're probably not coming up high enough in the water to
the ocean
dangling legs.
The ocean is a terrifying place. The world's what, 70% water? Think about that. Think about what's under there.
I feel like
it's terrifying. Maybe it's our bodies are comprised of 70% water. Either way, there's a lot of ocean. And it's deep.
What do you make of the primordial waters of evil from basically every mythology?
Yeah.
in the
Things
world.
live in the ocean where the light can't penetrate it. They're see-through. There are evil beings down there. It's crazier
I
than
agree with you
space.
there.
We can't even go so deep because it's so what is it? The air pressure is so wild. Like
Air pressure,
yeah, it gets so like
fluid pressure. There's no air down
well,
there, my
you
friend.
know what I mean.
Then again, air and water are both fluids.
See? Science.
That is science.
But the
Yeah,
pressure down there, we can't even sustain. We can't even go explore these
that
places.
is true. Right? I mean, it's
Science.
literally, it's actually, the concept of like pressure underwater is like actually so simple. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's not simple, but like you don't really think about it this way. The reason you're under pressure is literally because of the weight of water on top of you.
That checks out.
Right? Like that's basically like the simplest explanation of the physics.
Even like salt water is more dense than your body, which is why you'll float if there's enough salt in the water. Like you can't even like if the water if there's enough salt in the water, like you can't go down. You have to like fight against it.
Yes, all right. That's why if you go to like the Dead
Buoyancy.
Sea,
Yeah.
you'll just float in the water.
Mhm.
Question is that? I mean, it must be a density issue. No, is it? Is it?
I don't know how it works.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
I know that it does work that way. Don't know how.
That is actually a great question. It must be a density issue. I never actually really contemplated this. Let's see.
We
Why
do. We
do
make you think.
you float on salt water? Let's see what comes up.
And while you're looking that up,
What is its density?
after
Oh
that,
yeah. As salinity increases, so does its density. Duh.
Mhm.
That makes perfect sense. Right?
Oh,
If you take a cup of water and you take a pound of salt and you pour it into the cup of water, what happens?
it's probably gonna be more salt than water, depending on how big your cup is, but it's gonna be heavier, probably by about a pound.
I mean,
More
it's going
dense.
to increase in density.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense, actually. So, yeah, I mean, you had it perfectly right. I don't know why I was not wrapping my brain around that concept from the get-go.
But is there any way outside of just immersion therapy to combat your fears?
You mean like zapping someone's brain?
I mean, I don't know. Is it just like a good way to
Probably.
combat fears, like from a neurological standpoint, a biological standpoint, a
Let's
brain
Google
science standpoint?
nothing I'm aware of, but let's Google it.
Let's see.
How to cure irrational fears. Let's see. Let's see what the NHS. What is this? NHS?
I found one in Popular Mechanics.
I don't know what this is.
Yeah, this is just saying like immersion therapy, like keep doing it.
This is stupid. Yeah. This article is not.
The takeaway. Yeah, this seems, I think I could have written this article. No offense to whoever wrote this. What else we got? Phobia specific patterns of cognitive emotion regulation strategies. This was in Nature.
What is it?
It's the phobia specific patterns of cognitive something or other.
Sounds complex.
Yeah, this is way too much reading for me. And there's like a chart with a bunch of lines and circles and squares. Yeah, I'm good. I think I'm cool just being afraid of heights.
I mean, but like, are you so afraid of heights you can't even go on like a roller coaster?
No, I love roller coasters, but I like waiting in line, looking over the edge. That's what terrifies me.
I mean, I don't think that's a fear of heights. I think that is a respect for height. But if you can literally be like, I'm strapped into a roller coaster, and you can cognitively use your ability to like override that rational fear, to me that's like a normal physiologic response.
I was terrified of getting on a roller coaster for a long time. Then I did it, and it was like the most fun thing ever.
Julia
I like that.
There are therapy options for sure. Would you like to elaborate on what these therapy options might be? hypnosis, maybe, I suppose.
Yeah.
But people must try like hypnosis.
I'm sure there's
fear.
people that have like again, I wouldn't describe any of my fears or phobias as like
I mean, there's
crippling.
cognitive behavioral therapy, but I mean, I don't know. That kind of just seems like
Nothing,
exposure therapy to
yeah,
some degree.
and like nothing's gonna stop me from doing like everyday life. I guess that's the bigger takeaway from
Well,
this.
and
But
I
there's
think
people that are that
I
like
mean
they can't do
that's
things.
where I would say like you probably don't actually have a disorder. Like if I had to guess, if you looked in the DSM, like a significant component of these diagnoses probably has something to do with
It affecting
disruption of ability to function in everyday life or perform. They have to affect. It has to be like truly affecting your life to be considered like pathologic versus like normal fearful respect of something that's like rightfully fearful, right?
But then but what about like the sharks in swimming pools? Like that is a lingering feeling. Or I'm just like terrified that a pigeon's gonna explode. Like you ever just think about weird stuff like that? Like what if that pigeon explodes in my face?
Why would a pigeon explode?
I
I
don't
mean, I
know.
guess if you subscribe to like birds aren't
They're
real,
they're
sure.
they're not real. And what if it just flies at me and blows up? Like that's a real thought.
Okay, so that's an intrusive thought, but does it like?
That's a fear. But it doesn't cripple me. Like I just
I mean, if
keep
it
my
doesn't
distance
cripple
from
you, I mean,
pigeons.
maybe you just. I mean, yeah, it's a little weird, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a disorder.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify anything. But these like random irrational fear thoughts. I don't know the
Maybe
details, but there are options.
you just need a little more sense of hope in your life, Josh.
Give me the microchip. Put the microchip with the hope. That's what we'll call it. The great microchip hope of 2024 coming soon.
Have you ever? Actually, never mind. That's not a good question. I take that back. I was
Well,
gonna
I
ask
want
you
to
a
know, no,
question
I'm just
about.
saying,
I
I
was
want to
gonna
know
ask
what
you
it
a
is.
question about video games, but I was like kind of off topic. I don't think it's really on topic.
All right, fair enough.
We'll get off a rabbit trail that's just largely irrelevant.
we'll 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 dob we'll dodge this rabbit hole down whatever we were going to go down. We've done enough of that in
What
this
other
episode.
what other articles do you have interesting on your list? I know you looked up a bunch. Which are the most interesting ones?
Yeah, this one was a tougher one. Why we physically feel fear, what causes fear, UWA online.
Oh, was this that Nature article you were talking about? Phobia specific patterns of cognitive emotion
Yeah,
regulation strategies.
that was way too complex for anything I'm capable of
This
reading.
chart is very overwhelming.
That I might have a fear of that chart specifically. And
That's
I
crazy.
may not be able to shake that ever again.
Let's see. Let's check out the abstract. Although fear plays a vital role in survival, an overly active threat detection system could be maladaptive. Well, no duh. I mean, actually, we focused a lot on like the irrational fear or over.
Yeah, I think we're going on the same thought process. I was thinking about this as you even just read that statement. Let's dive into the survival-esque like fear components, the ones that are
Well,
ingrained in us.
what I was going to say though is like almost like we've talked about the over application of the fear mechanism. So I guess what you're saying is now you could slide a little bit more to the like physiologic, like what is normal fear
For
and
survival.
I was gonna say like almost the other end of the spectrum. Like what about the lack of fear in scenarios where it's like, appropriate? Because that's a very real thing too. I mean, I think there's a component, right? And I think that's probably all largely like amygdala related, right? And I think a lot of that probably comes down to like sociopathic behavior. Like how do you like I mean, you just like what's his name? Dahmer drills a hole in his victim's head. The victim is standing there talking to the police, and he's just like, "Yep,
Like calm, not fearful at all.
not fearful of
That's
any repercussions."
right.
I mean, there's a fundamental lack of fear there,
Mhm.
right? I don't know. And then like clearly like these mice we talked about, like these toxoplasma mice, just lack fear, right? They'll just walk right up to a predator.
Or what about the people that like that fear feeling, like the thrill seekers,
Yeah, that I
the
honestly I got nothing. I find
the,
that
the
odd.
adrenaline junkies?
Yeah, I don't know, like, because I feel like if it's thrill seeking, at that point, you're just overriding the fear response. Like you're kind of hijacking the fear response
And almost
for
instead of it
thrill
being
seeking.
right, instead of it being a negative experience, feeling that fear, it's almost a positive one. But is that
Yeah, well,
them
you're taking your.
consciously?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on.
I was gonna say, are they consciously overriding it in your opinion, or is it just something that they're just like their body has a different response to fear? It's like, oh, I kind of like that feeling.
If I had to guess,
Mhm.
this is my guess. I think it's probably a learned behavior because I do agree with you. It does seem like it's more of a thrill seeking type behavior.
Mhm.
But it's like kind of realizing like, oh, I can hijack this controlled fear response in order to experience thrill
Mhm.
without actually exposing myself to risk. At least when
Mhm.
you're talking about like people who like to go to like love scary movies and like stuff that like legitimately like scares the living lights out of you, right? But you have that conscious understanding of like I'm not actually putting myself at harm. So you're kind of hijacking that fear eliciting mechanism in a controlled environment where you know you're not at risk to basically to thrill seek. It's kind of I mean that's how I'm thinking about it. Whereas like would you take those same individuals and be like, well, you can walk across this canyon on a tightrope with no safety mechanism whatsoever. It's going to be a thrilling experience, but you might die.
But there are those people like
There
what
are.
Travis Pastrana likes jumping out of airplanes without a parachute and putting it on in midair. Yeah.
Travis Pastrana, that
Yeah,
guy's still around?
of course he is. Red Bull gives you wings.
Really? I haven't heard
Allegedly.
that name since like the 90s, bro.
Yeah, man. At least I
That
think he's
was the
still
first
around.
guy to do a backflip on a dirt bike, right?
Yeah, I think was it a backflip or a front flip?
I think it was a backflip. Travis
He does racing.
Pastrana.
He does extreme sports, or the people that get in those squirrel suits and go
Guy
flying.
looks so old now. Oh, those like body suits where they
Yeah,
yeah.
or like skydiving for fun.
I feel like these guys who are like actual professional stunt men, it's so insanely calculated though.
I get it, but there's still a risk. Like you
Well,
can't
yeah, there's
calculate.
a risk. People definitely die, but
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just part of me that thinks it's a little more calculated than
Well, it
we're
is,
led to believe.
and I do think what you said is like it's a learned experience where it's like, oh, I can override this. And like I've done it, I've seen it, I know how to do it safely. So I'm going to put myself at less risk than people think, but it still elicits that response. Like, right? Like it
Mhm.
still is an override. I don't think what you said, like it makes sense to me still, even in this situation.
This is fascinating.
You just go
Reading
down
about like I just
Travis
remember
Pastrana rabbit hole.
yeah, I'm like reading his Wikipedia page
I think
now.
he skydived from like the atmosphere. I think that was him. Maybe that was somebody else.
Who's
No,
the person that like jumped out of like from space?
yeah.
That wasn't that is not coming up.
So maybe it wasn't him, but he's jumped out of airplanes without a parachute and like put it on like while free falling. Like, why would you do that? Why would anyone do that?
Mm,
What's the pass for me, dog?
I'm pretty sure this is the guy. He was the first person to ever land a backflip on a dirt bike.
Probably. I mean, he's been around forever.
Yeah, here we go. 2000. Pastrana won the gold medal for the second time and attempted his first ever backflip on a motorcycle, but broke his foot. Okay, here we go. 2001. Won his third gold. Still the only person to win the event. Pastrana, 2002, out with an injury. 2003, fourth gold medal, became second rider ever to complete a 360 in competition. 2004, blah, blah, blah. Won
He had a show. He had Nitro
Best
Circus on
Trick.
MTV.
He won Best Trick for a one-handed 360, Superman seat grab, and Indian air backflip. 2005, fifth gold medal, attempted first ever backflip, bar spin on a motorcycle. This dude definitely was the first one to land a backflip for sure. Because I feel like I would literally
I believe you.
Probably like 12 years old watching it on ESPN when it happened. Like there was some these are like major X Games. Because I used to love the X Games.
Same, man.
I was a big time X Games watcher.
Because it was on like the actual ESPN when we were growing up.
Yeah, it was on ESPN, and it was like kind of like the younger, hipper thing, right? Yeah, everybody was into the Olympics, but like
it wasn't
the cool kids were into the X Games.
Yep, and it wasn't like an underground anymore. Like these were big time competitions. You had like Shaun White with the snowboarding, Tony Hawk landing the 900.
Yeah, so those are the that's to say that was one of the two major events. I remember Travis Pastrana's backflip and Tony Hawk landing a 900.
Man, on that note, you need to watch the Tony Hawk documentary. I think it's on HBO or Hulu.
That sounds.
And it's him trying to. It's him like growing up and how he became who he is, and landing the 900, and him attempting it again now. And he's old. He has a podcast too. It's dope.
He has a podcast?
Yeah, it's with one of his skateboard buddies. I found it because they had the Undertaker on it.
Oh, interesting.
And it was awesome. They're hilarious.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
For all the reading that I do now, it's actually kind of interesting. As a kid, I was not that big of a reader. My older brother used to read all the time, and my mom always struggled to kind of like get me to read. And I remember picking up the Tony Hawk biography at the middle school library, and I just read the whole thing like in a day. It was like turned me into a different person.
You know what's funny is I was very similar, but I found the biography is about sports people were like my go-to. Like the Derek Jeter one was the one I couldn't put down.
Oh, that's cool.
And I read the Jose Canseco one, Juiced, which is like he's just a crazy person, and I don't think any of it was actually accurate, but still funny to read.
Yeah, I think honestly, the Tony Hawk biography, because I read more than one of his biographies, like in 7th grade, it must have been, and I think that was really like my introduction of like realizing like, part of what makes me enjoy reading is like reading about other people's lives. I've been a big biography reader like ever since that time of my life. Another great biography I loved reading was the Steve Jobs biography. I actually really liked that biography.
But that's why documentaries are still so great to watch, especially when like they put out a really good documentaries. You get a peek into these people's lives and learning about them. And when what they're finding now, and I know we're getting off on a completely different tangent.
Yeah,
what we're finding out now is like sports, like they're invested in learning more about these people. When you peek behind the curtain, it makes them so much more marketable. Is because people relate with other people when they're real. Yeah. And same thing with biographies, documentaries about it's the human element.
Yeah,
I think that's why like streaming podcasts, like personally, that's why I love listening to people speak, is because it's real, and we've been pushed like marketing garbage down our throats for so long that we're numb to it now. So it's like, well, real stories are always going to resonate with real people.
Yeah,
AI is not taking over anytime soon. Well, it probably will, but it's fine.
I don't know. I have a feeling ChatGPT could probably put on a pretty banger podcast about things that are not even true, and people would love it.
Probably. The Drake song still cracks me up.
Yeah. There's this biography series I've been reading for like on and off for like many years now that this guy, what's his name? Chuck Swindoll, that's his name. I have one of them sitting on the table next to my desk. That's why I looked over. He takes different people from the Bible and writes a biography about their life, right? So it's not like, oh, here's this Bible study. It's like, here's this character we've extracted from scriptural texts, and we've done all the historical research we can to provide like the most biographical sketch of like who we think this ancient person really was. I've literally been, I mean, and it's like a series of books. I've been reading them on and off for probably 4 or 5 years now. Fascinating reads. So I actually just cracked open the biography on Moses, like kind of like who this guy is. It's getting good. I'm liking it.
I mean, those type of things are fascinating. I'm not a history buff, but it's like everybody knows these stories in a nutshell, but let's get a peek behind like what that person was in day-to-day life.
Yeah, I have a feeling like I've never read an Abraham Lincoln biography, but I have a feeling like biographies written on that guy's life probably paint such a different picture.
Yeah, he hunted vampires.
You think of him like just from, whatever middle school history class or whatever.
He was on the penny and he hunted vampires.
He hunted vampires. Is that a real story? Is that a factoid? I don't know that I'm familiar with this idea.
I think there are documentaries and books written about it.
What do you have? Marfan syndrome? Is that what Abraham Lincoln had?
I have no idea.
Did I just make that up? Abraham Lincoln.
I don't even know what that syndrome. What is that syndrome?
Marfan. Let's see if it's even true. Maybe not.
I still want to know what it is, regardless.
Oh, I'll tell you. I'm trying to see it. This paper came up. Yeah, according to this, I think that is correct. Is believed to have affected Abraham Lincoln. So, Marfan syndrome is a connective tissue disorder that is autosomal dominant. So that means if you have the defective gene, you will get the disease no matter what. And it
basically,
confirmed by Julia, presumably Marfan.
So our new fact checker.
We think he had Marfan's, but basically it's a connective tissue. It's a genetic disorder that affects connective tissues in the body. People are generally very tall. They're very skinny. All kinds of other stuff. So let's see. Where are off the top? This is like hardcore board material. Let's say clinical features of Marfan's. Tall, slender build, disproportionately long arms, legs, and fingers. Oh yeah, I forgot. Breastbone that protrudes outward or inward. High arched palate and crowned teeth. Heart murmurs. Nearsightedness. Abnormal scoliosis. Flat feet. Yep.
Doesn't sound fun.
No, your body's basically falling apart because you're a string bean.
Yeah, you're just like stretched out.
Yeah, all the glue that holds your body together is all jankied up. On that note, you don't have to be fearful of Marfan syndrome because if you had it, you'd have it.
Well, now I'm terrified of it. I'm not that tall.
You can't get it.
I might.
That's true. Men of our height cannot have Marfan syndrome. We are more likely to have Turner syndrome, and I
don't want that either.
Neither of us have Turner syndrome.
Well, now I feel like I might have it.
No. Here, go like this. Show me your neck. Yep, you don't have Turner syndrome.
I think so. I think I have it. I think it's missed.
If you had Turner syndrome, you'd have a webbed neck, my friend.
What is a webbed
Let me show
neck?
you a picture of this. Turner syndrome neck.
I'm already terrified. I don't like
You
this game
should be
anymore.
terrified.
Now I'm terrified about learning. I have a phobia of learning what Turner syndrome is.
Here you go. I got the picture for you. Hold on. Let me let's go ahead and hide this for a second.
What other syndrome should I be afraid that I might have?
I don't think you have a syndrome. You're okay. You can trust me on this one.
Well,
Here you go. Webbed neck of Turner syndrome.
oh man, this reminds me of there's like a mugshot of that
Reminds you of
famous dude
Steve.
that had like no neck. Oh,
I think maybe
I don't mean to
Steve
laugh.
has Turner syndrome.
Steve might.
Steve might have Turner syndrome. That's
It's a
definitely
web
what that's
neck.
definitely what Steve's neck looks like. On that note, gotta love a good derailment of the Rad and Norty show. Anyway, I've
What are we-
enjoyed
what are we
talking
talking
about
about next
beer
week?
this evening. Next week, we're gonna go ahead and leave the topic for next week tentative. We may need to be off air for a week for administrative purposes. We will discuss offline and we will keep the audience informed. But if everything proceeds as scheduled, we will be discussing the effects of exercise on the brain next week. So shifting gears a little bit from some of these psychiatric topics. Obviously, we spend a lot of time talking about depression, anxiety, fear. We're going to get back to, change gears a little bit, change the tone up, and, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern time, every Wednesday. If the show is on break next week, we will let everybody know via social media. Obviously, we're in a very dynamic administrative season with the nonprofit organization. There's a lot of moving parts, of which we may need to be just spending a little extra time nailing down some loose boards next week. But obviously, we'll just keep it loose. Worst case scenario, we'll see you back in 2 weeks. But no change to the time or the day, 7 p.m. every Wednesday, unless we're on break. On that note, any closing thoughts, Norty?
Don't let fear rule you. That's what I've taken away from this.
That's not bad advice. Don't let fear rule you, but if you fear the Almighty God,
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like there's a difference between fear like ruling you and like a healthy respect for certain things. That like fear is not always a bad thing. It being a motivating factor.
Yep.
So I'm here
my
for
perspective, fear God and submit to that rulership, and don't let fear rule your life, because that is something worth being afraid of. If you really stop and think about it, a truly almighty God worth fearing? I think yes. Think about it. There's your food for thought. We'll see you next week. Rad and Norty,